The meeting took place in an abandoned subway station deep beneath Seoul. 23 resistance fighters had gathered in the darkness, representing cells from across Korea, Japan, and eastern China. Each person had risked their life to be here. If the Vorthans discovered them, every human freedom fighter in the region would be dead by morning. General Nam Woo-jin stood before the group. He was older than most of them, with white hair and deep scars on his face from the invasion 15 years ago. Until recently, he had been hiding in the deepest underground bunkers, waiting for the right moment to reveal himself. That moment had come. "My friends," he began, his voice carrying the authority of his former military rank. "For too long we have been scattered like leaves in the wind, fighting alone, dying alone, achieving nothing but our own survival." He looked around the room at faces lit by flickering candles. Today that changes. Captain Lee Tae-ho sat with his team studying the other resistance leaders. Some he recognized from before the war. Others were younger people who had grown up knowing only Vorthan rule. All of them shared the same desperate hunger for freedom. "Dr. Park's discovery has given us something we never had before," General Nam continued. "The ability to turn alien weapons against their creators. But this power is useless unless we work together." Engineer Bae Soo-hyun stood to address the group. She was a weapons specialist who had been studying captured Vorthan equipment in hidden workshops for months. "I have successfully taken apart and rebuilt 3 different types of alien weapons," she reported. "Energy rifles, plasma explosives, and personal shields. With the interface ability, we can not only use these weapons but make them better." Excited whispers ran through the assembled fighters. For 15 years, they had been forced to fight with primitive weapons against advanced alien technology. Now the balance was shifting. "What about their flying machines?" asked a representative from the Busan resistance cell. Lee Sung-min answered from where he sat near the back. "I have been studying Vorthan aircraft systems. Their ships rely heavily on automated controls, which makes them vulnerable to human mental interference. If we can get close enough, we can override their navigation and weapons." Scout Lim Kyung-ho stepped forward with detailed maps of alien installations across the region. "I have identified 21 primary targets," he announced, pointing to locations marked in red ink. "Command centers, weapons storage, communication towers. If we attack them all at the same time, we can destroy their entire control network." The planning session continued for hours. They discussed weapons, tactics, timing, and coordination. Dr. Yoon Hai-rim explained her training methods for developing the human-alien interface ability. It was dangerous and exhausting, but more people were learning it every day. The most difficult topic was what to do about human collaborators. "Commander Choi Dong-woo controls the Seoul Administrative District," General Nam said grimly. "He has been working with the Vorthon since the early days of occupation. He sends humans to work camps and reports resistance activity to alien authorities." The room fell silent. Everyone knew collaborators who had betrayed their own species for better food, safer housing, and protection from alien punishment. Some had been forced into collaboration to save their families. Others had chosen it willingly for personal gain. "We need to approach them carefully," Lee suggested. "Some may be willing to help us when they see we have a real chance of winning. Others will fight to protect their positions." "And if they refuse to help?" asked a fighter from the Tokyo cell. Lee did not answer directly, but everyone understood. Collaborators who sided with the aliens would be treated as enemies. Over the following weeks, the resistance network grew rapidly. Training camps were established in hidden locations throughout the mountains and ruins. Weapons were collected and stored. Intelligence was gathered about alien movements and defenses. Most importantly, more and more humans learned to use the interface ability. The training was neither easy nor safe. Many volunteers suffered severe headaches and exhaustion from trying to connect their minds to alien technology. Some experienced temporary blindness or memory loss. A few suffered permanent damage to their nervous systems. But they kept training. Jin Ho-seok had become one of the best at interfacing with Vorthon devices. He could override security systems, disable patrol drones, and even crash transport vehicles from a distance. But each use left him weak and shaking for hours. "It feels like fire running through my thoughts," he told Park after a particularly difficult training session. "Like my brain is being cooked from the inside." Park monitored his vital signs carefully. "Your neural activity reaches dangerous levels during interface events. We need to find ways to reduce the strain. Can we use medicine, painkillers, or stimulants? I tried that with other volunteers. It makes the interface connection unstable. More dangerous, not less dangerous. Dr. Yoon had developed a different approach. She believed that meditation and mental discipline could help humans manage the strain of interfacing with alien technology. She worked with volunteers to develop techniques for focusing the mind and controlling the connection process. Her methods showed promise, but they required weeks of training that most resistance fighters did not have time for. Meanwhile, Scout Lim continued gathering intelligence on Vorthon defenses. He discovered that the aliens had begun changing their security procedures. Patrol routes that had been predictable for years were now randomized. New types of sensors were being installed at important facilities. They know something is happening, he reported to General Nam. They do not know exactly what, but they are taking precautions. How long before they figure out what we can do? The general asked. Hard to say. Maybe weeks, maybe only days. The pressure was mounting. They needed to act soon, before the Vorthons could develop countermeasures against the human interface ability. But there was another problem. Some resistance leaders were having doubts about their ability to coordinate such a massive operation. They had been hiding and running for so long that the idea of actually fighting back seemed impossible. What if we fail? Asked the leader of the Pusan cell during one meeting. What if we just make things worse for all humans? General Nam's response was firm. Then we die fighting instead of dying as slaves. That is better than what we have now. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Commander Choi Dong-woo, the human collaborator who administered Seoul for the Vorthons, sent a secret message requesting a meeting. The meeting was arranged through multiple intermediaries and held in an abandoned factory near the old airport. Lee and General Nam went personally despite the obvious risks. They brought their best fighters and had escape routes planned. Choi was a heavy man in his 40s, wearing the official uniform of a Vorthon administrator. But his hands shook as he spoke, and his eyes showed years of guilt and fear. I know what you think of me, he began. I know what I have become, but I want you to understand something. Everything I have done, every order I have followed, was to keep as many humans alive as possible. You have sent thousands to the work camps, Lee accused. Yes, but I saved tens of thousands from execution. Choi's voice was barely above a whisper. The Vorthons wanted to reduce Earth's population by 90% in the first year. I convinced them that living workers were more valuable than dead examples. General Nam studied the collaborator carefully. Why are you here now? Because I have information you need, and because I want to help you win. Choi revealed the locations of hidden Vorthon installations, the schedules for troop movements, and the security codes for administrative buildings. More importantly, he told them about other human administrators who were secretly working against their alien masters. We have been waiting for this moment for 15 years, he explained, waiting for someone to give us a chance to make up for what we have had to do to survive. The information Choi provided changed everything. Targets that had seemed impossible to reach were suddenly vulnerable. Defenses that had appeared unbreakable could be bypassed from within. As the resistance leaders finalized their attack plans, Lee found himself thinking about the past 15 years. So much suffering, so much loss, so much despair, but maybe it had all been leading to this moment. Maybe humanity's greatest strength was not their ability to interface with alien technology. Maybe it was their ability to endure, to survive, to keep hope alive even in the darkest times. The attack was scheduled for dawn in 2 days. Across the world, resistance cells were making their final preparations. Soon the Vorthons would discover what happened when humans decided they had been slaves long enough. Lee looked up at the alien ships passing overhead and smiled grimly. Very soon those ships would be falling from the sky. Lee Tae-ho crouched behind a broken wall and listened to the sound above. The alien ships moved across the sky like metal birds, their engines humming a song of death. He had heard that sound every day for 15 years. It never stopped haunting him. The city around him was nothing like the Seoul he remembered. Where tall buildings once reached toward the sky, now only ruins remained. Where millions of people had lived and worked, now there were only empty streets and the smell of rust. The aliens called themselves Vorthons. They had arrived without warning on a spring morning in 2142. Their ships had blotted out the sun. Their weapons had turned every human military base into burning metal in less than 3 days. Lee had been a captain in the Korean Space Force then. He had watched his friends die. He had seen his commanding officers surrender. He had escaped into the mountains with a handful of survivors and had been hiding ever since. Now he was the leader of a small group of resistance fighters. They called themselves free humans, but Lee knew they were really just ghosts living in the shadow of their dead world. A hand touched his shoulder. Lee turned to see Jin Hoseok crawling up beside him. The young man was thin and dirty, like everyone who lived in the ruins. His eyes were older than his 25 years. "The patrol is moving east," Hoseok whispered. "We can reach the tunnel in 5 minutes." Lee nodded and signaled to the others. Kang Mi-young emerged from behind a pile of concrete, her radio equipment strapped to her back. She monitored alien communications day and night, trying to understand their language and their plans. Dr. Park So-jin came out of her hiding place last. She had been a university professor before the war. Now she spent her time in underground labs, trying to understand how Vorthan technology worked. Her hands were stained with chemicals and her hair had turned gray from stress. The 4 humans moved through the ruins like shadows. They knew every broken street, every collapsed building, every safe path through the dead city. This was their world now, a world where making noise meant death. Their destination was an old subway tunnel beneath the financial district. Park had built her laboratory there, hidden behind false walls and powered by stolen alien energy cells. It was the most dangerous place they could work, but it was also the most important. They reached the tunnel entrance without being seen. Hoseok checked his scanner one last time. The device was built from salvaged parts and often broke down, but it was their only way to detect alien surveillance. "Clear," he whispered. They slipped into the darkness of the underground. The laboratory was small and cramped. Park had gathered equipment from dozens of different sources over the years. Some pieces were stolen from alien facilities. Others were built from scraps of human technology that still worked. All of it was held together with determination and hope. "Show them what you found," Lee said as they gathered around Park's workbench. Park picked up a small device that looked like a metal spider. It had thin legs and a central body covered in alien symbols. "This is a Vorthan biological scanner," she explained. "They use it to monitor our bodies. Heart rate, brain activity, stress levels. It tells them if we are healthy enough to work, or if we are planning something they do not like." She connected the device to her computer. The screen filled with waves of data flowing like water. "I have been studying how it works for months, but yesterday I discovered something strange." She activated a program on her computer. "Watch what happens when I feed human brain patterns into the scanner." The steady waves on the screen suddenly changed. They became chaotic, then organized into something completely different. The alien symbols on the scanner began to flicker and change. "What does that mean?" asked Mi-young. "I do not know yet," Park admitted. "But it means human brains affect Vorthan technology in ways they did not expect. Maybe in ways they did not want." Hoseok leaned closer to the screen. "Could we use this against them?" "Maybe. I need more time to understand it." More equipment. More samples. Their conversation was interrupted by Mi-young's radio crackling to life. She pressed her earpiece and listened carefully. Her face went pale. "What is it?" Lee demanded. Mi-young looked at them with fear in her eyes. "Major transmission from the command ship in orbit. They are not just controlling Earth anymore. They are preparing for something much bigger." She switched her radio to speaker mode. Alien voices filled the laboratory, speaking in the harsh language of the Vorthans. Mi-young had learned enough to understand the basic meaning. "They are gathering ships, weapons, troops." She paused, translating as the transmission continued. "They want to invade other worlds, other species that have never seen aliens before." Lee felt cold anger growing in his chest. For 15 years, humanity had been slaves. They had worked in the mines and factories. They had obeyed every command. They had tried to survive by not fighting back. But this was different. This was not just about Earth anymore. "They want to use human soldiers," Mi-young continued, her voice shaking. "Thousands of them. They plan to train our people as warriors and send them to attack innocent worlds." The words hit the group like physical blows. It was one thing to be enslaved. It was another thing to be forced to enslave others. "Where are they gathering these forces?" Park asked. The transmission mentioned a place called the Northern Complex. "They are moving ships and weapons there, building an invasion fleet." Lee stood up and walked to the laboratory's single window. Through the dirty glass, he could see alien patrol ships moving across the sky. For 15 years, he had counted those ships and tried to stay hidden from them. Now he was thinking about something different. He was thinking about fighting back. If they are planning to use humans as weapons against other species, they will need to control our minds completely, Park said. That means more of these devices. She held up the biological scanner. More chances for me to study how their technology interacts with human biology. Hosiak was already thinking like an engineer. If we could somehow get inside their systems, we would need to be very careful, Lee warned. If they discover what we are doing, they will kill us, Mi-young finished. But they are already planning to turn us into killers. Maybe death would be better than that. They spent the next hour going through everything Mi-young had intercepted from alien communications. The Vorthans were moving quickly. Ships were being prepared in orbit. Human work crews were being selected for special training. The invasion of other worlds would begin within months. We cannot stop this alone, Lee said finally. We need help from other resistance groups. Most of them have been destroyed, Mi-young pointed out. The few that remain are scattered and weak. Then we find them and make them strong again. Lee looked at each of his companions. We share what Park has discovered. We teach others about the technology. We build something bigger than just our small group. Park nodded slowly. It will be dangerous. If we start reaching out to other cells, we increase the chance of being discovered. Everything we do is dangerous, Lee replied. But for the first time in 15 years, we have something that might give us hope. As they prepared to leave the laboratory, Lee thought about the past 15 years. Humanity had survived when the aliens expected them to give up and die. They had endured slavery, brutality, and despair. Maybe Park was right about human brains being different from what the Vorthans expected. Maybe humans were more dangerous than their masters realized. The sun was setting when they emerged from the tunnels. Alien patrol ships continued their endless circuits above the city. But now Lee was not just hiding from them. Now he was planning to fight them. In the distance, one of the massive Vorthan transport ships lifted off from the spaceport. Inside, Lee knew, were humans who would never see their homeworld again. They would be turned into soldiers and sent to destroy species they had never met, unless someone stopped it. Lee made a decision that would change everything. Tomorrow, they would begin reaching out to other resistance groups. They would share Park's discovery. They would start building something that had seemed impossible since the day the aliens arrived. They would start building hope. 6 months after the uprising, President Shin Bo-ra stood before the newly built Global Assembly Building in what had once been New York. The structure rose from the ruins like a symbol of hope, built using both human engineering and captured Vorthan technology working together. Behind her, representatives from every nation on Earth waited to hear her speak. These were not the same broken survivors who had hidden in tunnels and ruins just months ago. They were the leaders of a free humanity, ready to take their place among the stars. My fellow humans, President Shin began. Her voice carried across the world by communication systems that resistance fighters had built from alien technology. Today we remember those who died so that we could stand here as free people. Today we honor their sacrifice by choosing our own path among the stars. General Lee Tae-ho sat in the front row, wearing the new uniform of the Earth Defense Force. The promotion from resistance captain to general still felt strange. For so long he had been just another fighter hiding in the shadows. Now he commanded the most advanced military force humanity had ever possessed. Beside him sat Dr. Park Sojin, her face bearing the permanent marks of someone who had pushed the human-alien interface ability to its absolute limits. The neural damage would never fully heal, but her mind remained sharp. She now led the research teams, responsible for understanding and improving the technology humanity had captured from their former masters. The past 6 months had been a time of incredible change and difficult choices. Humanity had to decide what to do with thousands of Vorthan prisoners. They had to rebuild cities, restore governments, and create new institutions. Most importantly, they had to prepare for what came next, because the Vorthans had not been lying about the greater threat they faced. Dr. Jong Min-ho stood to address the assembly. As the lead researcher on hybrid human Vorthan technology, he had made discoveries that changed everything humanity thought they knew about their place in the galaxy. The Vorthans were not conquerors by choice, he announced. his words causing surprised murmurs throughout the hall. They were refugees fleeing from something they called the Devourers, an ancient enemy that destroys entire civilizations and moves on to find new prey. Images appeared on screens throughout the assembly building. Star maps showing paths of destruction across the galaxy, dead solar systems where thriving worlds had been reduced to empty space. The scale was almost impossible to understand. The Vorthons conquered other species not from cruelty, but from desperation, Dr. Jung continued. They needed soldiers, workers, and resources to fight an enemy that had been hunting them for thousands of years. President Shin returned to speak. This knowledge changes our situation, but it does not change our principles. We will not become conquerors like the Vorthons. We will not enslave other species to serve our needs, but we will defend ourselves and others against any threat. Admiral Han Seok-jin stepped forward to address the military situation. The former Space Force officer had become commander of humanity's first interstellar fleet, built using a combination of human innovation and Vorthon engineering. Our scout ships have made contact with 19 different alien species in nearby star systems, he reported. 14 of them are still under Vorthon control. 3 others have already been freed by their own resistance movements. 2 remain independent but are asking for our protection. The Admiral activated a 3-dimensional display showing the local region of space. Red points indicated systems still under alien control. Green points showed worlds that had been liberated. Yellow points represented species requesting human assistance. We have the technology and knowledge to help them, Admiral Han continued. But we must be careful not to become the very thing we fought against. Captain Kang Mi-young, now head of interstellar communications, had spent months establishing contact with alien resistance groups. Her work had revealed the true scope of the galactic conflict. The species we have contacted all share similar stories, she reported to the assembly. Advanced civilizations conquered primitive worlds, claiming they needed resources to fight an even greater enemy. Most of these empires have been preparing for the same threat the Vorthons feared. What exactly is this threat? Asked a representative from the African Federation. Dr. Park answered from her seat. According to Vorthon records, the Devourers will reach this region of the galaxy within 20 years. They do not just conquer civilizations, they consume entire planets. When they finish with a solar system, nothing remains but empty space and cosmic dust. The assembly hall fell silent as the implications became clear. Humanity had won their freedom, but they had inherited a war that had been raging across the galaxy for ages beyond counting. President Shin looked around the room at the faces of humanity's leaders. These people had already proven they could survive impossible odds. Now they would have to prove they could unite an entire galaxy against an ancient enemy. We have a choice, she said. We can hide on Earth and hope the Devourers ignore us. We can try to run as the Vorthons did, or we can stand and fight, not just for ourselves, but for every species that refuses to bow to tyranny. The vote was unanimous. Humanity would fight. Over the following weeks, human ships began departing Earth for distant star systems. Some carried military forces to assist in liberation efforts. Others carried diplomats to establish alliances with free species. All of them carried a message that had not been heard in the galaxy for centuries. That freedom was possible. That resistance could succeed. That even the most powerful empires could be defeated. Admiral Han stood on the bridge of humanity's flagship as it entered hyperspace toward the Tau Ceti system. Intelligence reports indicated that 3 different alien species in that region were planning coordinated uprisings against their Vorthon overlords. Admiral, called his communications officer. We are receiving a transmission from the Tau Ceti rebels. They are requesting immediate assistance. Tell them help is on the way, Han replied. Tell them Earth remembers what it was like to be enslaved. Tell them humanity fights for freedom wherever we find it. Back on Earth, Dr. Park worked in her new laboratory on the next generation of human-alien hybrid technology. The interface ability that had saved humanity was being refined and improved. Soon humans would be able to work with alien technology as naturally as they worked with their own inventions. But more importantly, they were learning to share that ability with other species. The neural interface was not uniquely human as they had first believed. Other alien races could learn it as well, given proper training and motivation. Lee Sung-min's younger brother had volunteered for the first mixed-species training program. He worked alongside alien refugees who had escaped Vorthon control, learning to interface with technology from dozens of different civilizations. My brother died believing that humans were alone in their fight, he told Park during one training session. I wish he could see this. Humans and aliens working together, preparing to face an enemy that threatens all of us. Park nodded, thinking of all the friends she had lost during the resistance years. He can see it, she replied. Through us. Through what we are building in his memory. General Lee visited the memorial that had been built for those who died in the uprising. Thousands of names were carved into black stone, including Jin Ho-seok, Dr. Yoon Hye-rim, and Major Kim Jae-sung. These people had given their lives so that humanity could be free. Now it was up to the survivors to ensure that their sacrifice had meaning, President Shin concluded her address to the global assembly with words that would be remembered for generations. The day humanity fought back was not the end of our struggle. It was the beginning of our responsibility. We have learned that freedom cannot be taken for granted. We have learned that the strong must protect the weak. We have learned that unity is more powerful than any weapon. She looked up at the night sky, visible through the transparent dome of the assembly building. Stars that had once seemed impossibly distant now felt within reach. Today, Earth's children go to the stars not as conquerors, but as liberators. We carry with us the knowledge that no tyrant, no matter how powerful, can permanently break the spirit of those who refuse to surrender. We carry the promise that freedom, once tasted, will never be forgotten. As the session ended, representatives filed out to begin implementing humanity's new role in galactic affairs. Ships would be built, alliances would be forged, and battles would be fought. The war against the Devourers would require sacrifices that made the fight against the Vorthons seem small by comparison. But humanity had learned something during their 15 years of slavery that no other species in the galaxy possessed. They had learned that they could endure anything, survive anything, overcome anything, as long as they never stopped believing in their own freedom. The day humanity fought back had become the day humanity chose to fight for everyone. The first light of dawn was still an hour away when Captain Lee Tae-ho raised his hand and gave the signal. All around the world, in cities and ruins and hidden camps, human resistance fighters saw similar signals and began to move. For 15 years they had waited in the shadows. Now it was time to step into the light. Lee pressed himself against the concrete wall of the Seoul Command Center and counted his heartbeats. 20 meters away, 2 Vorthon guards stood at the main entrance. Their energy weapons glowed softly in the darkness. In 30 seconds, Jin Ho-seok would override their security drones from across the street. In 60 seconds, the real war would begin. He thought about Dr. Park So-jin, who was leading her team toward the biological research facility on the other side of the city. He thought about Major Kim Jae-sung, who was approaching the northern complex with 50 volunteers and a prayer. He thought about thousands of other humans who were about to risk everything for a chance at freedom. The first drone turned on its masters exactly on time. The Vorthon guards barely had time to look up before their own patrol drone began firing at them. Bright energy beams cut through the pre-dawn darkness. More drones joined the attack as human fighters across the city triggered their interface abilities simultaneously. Security systems that had protected the aliens for 15 years suddenly became death traps. Automated defenses turned their weapons inward. Communication networks carried false orders and confusing signals. Energy shields flickered and died as their control systems received conflicting commands from human minds. Now, Lee shouted to his team. They rushed the entrance while the guards were distracted. Kang Mi-young had already overridden the door controls from her position. The blast doors that should have sealed the facility instead opened wide to welcome the human attackers. Inside the command center, Vorthon technicians scrambled to understand what was happening. Their instruments showed impossible readings. Their own technology was rebelling against them in ways their science said could not exist. Engineer Bae Soo-hyun threw the first of her improved plasma grenades. She had taken apart Vorthon explosives and rebuilt them using human engineering principles. The blast tore through alien control panels like they were made of paper. Lee found himself face to face with a tall Vorthon commander. The alien had gray skin and black eyes that showed no emotion. It reached for its weapon, but Lee was faster. He had trained for this moment for months. The interface ability felt like lightning in his brain as he connected with the alien's energy rifle. For a split second, he experienced what the Vorthon was feeling: confusion, fear, and something else he had not expected: respect. Then the weapon turned in the alien's hands and fired. Across Seoul, similar battles were taking place. Scout Lim Kyung-ho led an assault team against the communications tower. Dr. Yoon Hee-rim's group attacked the main power station. Commander Choi Dong-woo opened the doors of administrative buildings from the inside and guided human fighters to their targets. Each success came at a terrible cost. The interface ability required enormous mental effort, and many fighters pushed themselves beyond safe limits. Some collapsed from exhaustion after overriding a single device. Others suffered brain damage from trying to control multiple systems at once, but they kept fighting. The most important battle was taking place at the biological research facility where Dr. Park So-jin led her team through corridors. She knew better than the aliens who had built them. For months, she had studied the building's layout and security systems. She had planned for this moment in her dreams. The research labs were deep underground, protected by multiple layers of defense, but each defense system became a weapon and human. Hans' Park's team used their interface abilities to turn the facility against its creators. What they found in the deepest laboratory made Park's blood freeze in her veins. Hundreds of human brains floated in glass containers filled with blue liquid. Each brain was connected to Vorthan computers by thin cables and wires. Display screens showed neural activity patterns, learning processes, and data transfer rates. The aliens had not just been studying human minds. They had been harvesting them. "They are using us to make their technology smarter," whispered one of Park's team members, a young woman who had lost her parents in the work camps. Park felt rage building inside her chest. Pure, focused hatred that made the interface ability easier than it had ever been before. She reached out with her mind and touched every system in the facility at once. Security doors slammed shut, trapping Vorthan researchers in their own laboratories. Life support systems reversed direction, pumping poisonous gases into areas where aliens worked. The facility's main computer began broadcasting human memories directly into the Vorthan communication network. But Park was not finished. She accessed the facility's data storage systems and began copying everything. Every experiment, every procedure, every piece of stolen human knowledge. The information would be useful when humanity began building its own advanced technology. At the same time, Major Kim Jae-sung was leading the most dangerous assault of the day. The northern complex was enormous, protected by energy shields that could stop nuclear weapons. Automated defense systems surrounded it for kilometers in every direction. Inside, hundreds of Vorthan warships waited to depart for distant worlds. Kim had only 50 fighters with him. Against any normal target, it would have been suicide. But humans were not attacking normally anymore. Lee Sung-min piloted a captured Vorthan transport ship toward the complex's energy barrier. Behind him, other fighters prepared to use their interface abilities at exactly the right moment. They would have only one chance to get this right. As they approached the energy shield, Sung-min felt the familiar burning sensation in his brain as he connected with the transport's computer systems. But this time, instead of fighting the alien technology, he worked with it. He convinced the ship's computer that it was carrying authorized personnel. He made the energy shield believe that the approaching transport belonged inside the protected zone. The barrier opened to let them pass. Inside the complex, Kim's team scattered to their assigned targets. Some attacked the power systems that maintained the shields. Others sabotaged the warship's navigation computers. A few sacrificed themselves to ensure that the complex's defensive weapons could not fire on human positions outside. The cost was enormous. Good people died in explosions, were cut down by alien weapons, or simply collapsed when their brains could not handle the strain of the interface ability. Kim watched friends and comrades fall, knowing that their deaths were buying humanity its freedom. But they were winning. Reports flooded in from around the world through the communication systems that humans now controlled. London resistance fighters had captured the European command center. The Tokyo cell had destroyed 5 Vorthan warships in their docking bays. American fighters had turned an entire automated defense network against its alien operators. In Africa, Australia, South America, and dozens of islands, humans were proving that their former masters had completely underestimated them. The Vorthan response was swift, but ineffective. They tried to isolate their computer systems from human interference, only to discover that isolated systems were just as vulnerable to the interface ability. They attempted to shut down their own technology completely, which left them defenseless against conventional human weapons. They called for help from their ships in orbit, but their communication networks were no longer under their control. By midday, Vorthan forces across Earth were in full retreat. Some tried to reach their spacecraft and escape to the stars. Others simply surrendered, finally understanding that they could no longer control the species they had enslaved. General Nam, Wu Jin stood in the ruins of the Seoul Command Center and watched alien evacuation ships lifting off toward space. Around him, human fighters bandaged their wounds and mourned their dead. The victory had come at a terrible price. Jin Ho-seok had died overriding the shield systems at a critical moment. Dr. Yoon had collapsed while ensuring that power failures cascaded through the entire alien network. Hundreds of other brave humans had sacrificed themselves to make this day possible. "We did it," Park said quietly as she approached Lee. Her face showed the exhaustion of someone who had pushed the interface ability far beyond safe limits. "Yes," Lee replied, looking up at the alien ships fleeing toward the stars. "We did it." But even as he spoke, he knew this was not the end of humanity's story. It was only the beginning. The Vorthans had been defeated, but they would carry word of humanity's abilities to other parts of the galaxy. Some aliens would come as allies, others would come as enemies. Humanity had proven it could not be conquered or enslaved or broken. Now they had to prove they could build something better than what they had destroyed. The day humans fought back had become the day humans chose their own destiny. Dr. Park So-jin rubbed her tired eyes and looked at the computer screen again. She had been awake for 2 days straight, testing and retesting the same impossible results. The numbers should not be real, but they were there every time she ran the experiment. Human brain tissue was doing something to Vorthon technology that should not be possible. She picked up another alien device from her workbench. This one was a communication unit taken from a crashed patrol drone. For weeks she had been trying to understand how it worked. The circuits were unlike anything humans had ever built. They seemed to think and learn like living things. But when she connected the device to samples of human neural tissue, something strange happened. The alien circuits began to change. They started responding to human thoughts in ways their creators never intended. "Park, you need to see this right now." Jin Ho-seok's voice was tight with excitement and fear. He was standing at his workbench across the laboratory, holding a small Vorthan scanner in his shaking hands. Park walked over to him, her legs unsteady from exhaustion. "What happened to you?" "I was trying to hack into their security network. Same as always. Getting nowhere, same as always." Ho-seok pointed to the device in his hands. "But then I got angry. Really angry. I was thinking about my sister, how they took her to the work camps 5 years ago, how I never saw her again." The scanner in his hands was displaying symbols that looked almost like Korean writing. As Park watched, the alien characters shifted and changed into words she could read. "How is this possible?" she whispered. "I do not know. I was concentrating on hating them, hating their machines, hating everything they had done to us. Then suddenly the device just listened to me, like it was responding to my thoughts." Park felt her heart racing. This was exactly what she had been looking for in her laboratory experiments. Proof that human minds could somehow control Vorthon technology. "Try it again," she urged. Ho-seok closed his eyes and concentrated. His face showed strain and effort. Slowly, the alien symbols on the scanner's display began to change. This time they formed a simple message in Korean. "We are still fighting." Before Park could ask more questions, Captain Lee Tae-ho entered the laboratory with urgent news. "I made contact with resistance cells in 3 different cities. They want to meet with us." He stopped when he saw their faces. "What is wrong?" "Nothing is wrong," Park said, excitement building in her voice. "Everything might be right." "Show him, Ho-seok." Ho-seok demonstrated the scanner again. Lee watched in amazement as alien technology obeyed human thoughts. "This is what you found in your experiments?" Lee asked Park. "Yes, but I did not understand it until now. Humans can somehow override Vorthon control systems. But it requires intense emotion. Anger, fear, determination. The stronger the feeling, the stronger the connection." Their conversation was interrupted by Kang Mi-young rushing into the laboratory. "Captain, I have been monitoring emergency frequencies from resistance groups around the world. You need to hear this." She activated her radio equipment and voices filled the air. Reports from America, Europe, Africa, Australia, all saying similar things. Humans were somehow taking control of Vorthon technology. Not consistently, not easily, but it was happening. A group in the former United States turned a patrol drone against its handlers, Mi-young reported, translating the coded messages. Fighters in Europe crashed an alien transport by overriding its navigation. A cell in Africa shut down an entire security grid for almost an hour. Lee felt something he had not experienced in 15 years. Real hope. There is more news, Mi-young continued. Major Kim Jae-sung sent a message from the mountain resistance. He has been hiding up there since the invasion, gathering information. He says he knows the location of the northern complex. Park looked up sharply. The alien staging area for their invasion fleet? Yes, and Kim says he has been watching it for months. He knows their security systems, their patrol schedules, their weak points. He wants to meet with us to plan an attack. Lee felt excitement and fear in equal measure. For 15 years, the resistance had been limited to small acts of sabotage and survival. The idea of actually attacking a major alien facility seemed impossible, but if humans could really control Vorthon technology. 3 days later, they met Major Kim Jae-sung at a ruined temple in the mountains outside Seoul. Kim was a thin man with gray hair and eyes that had seen too much. He had been a military strategist before the invasion, and he had been planning this moment for 15 years. With Kim were 2 other survivors. Dr. Yoon Hae-rim had been a physicist working on energy weapons before the aliens came. Lee Sung-min was a former astronaut who understood how spacecraft worked. The northern complex is the key to everything, Kim explained as they studied maps and photographs. The aliens have been building their invasion fleet there for months. Hundreds of ships, thousands of weapons, enough firepower to destroy entire worlds. How do we get close to it? Lee asked. The security must be enormous, it is. But security systems can be turned against their operators if someone knows how to do it. Kim looked at Ho-seok. Mi-young told me what you discovered. The ability to control their technology with human thoughts. Dr. Yoon leaned forward eagerly. I have been working on similar experiments in my own laboratory. I found that humans can interfere with Vorthon energy systems. Not permanently, but enough to cause disruptions. It is not easy, Ho-seok warned. The mental strain is enormous. I felt like my brain was being burned from the inside. Then we need to learn how to do it safely, Kim decided. We need to train others. We need to understand exactly how this ability works. Over the following days, they established a training program. Dr. Yoon worked with Park to study the scientific principles behind the human-Vorthon interface. They discovered that the key was reaching a state of intense focus combined with strong emotion. Fear could trigger the ability, but it was unstable and dangerous. Anger worked better but was hard to control. Determination was the most reliable, but it required enormous mental discipline. Lee was the first to volunteer for training. He sat in front of a captured alien communication device and concentrated on everything he wanted to protect. His family's memory, his friends who were still alive, the hope that humanity might someday be free again. The device's display flickered. Alien symbols wavered and changed. For a brief moment, Lee felt a connection like touching electricity with his mind. He was inside the machine, understanding how it thought, controlling what it did. Then the connection broke and Lee collapsed from exhaustion. It works, he gasped. But Park is right. It takes everything you have. One by one, they all learned to make the connection. Mi-young discovered she could override communication systems and intercept alien messages. Sung-min found he could interfere with navigation controls and crash enemy vehicles. Dr. Yoon learned to overload power systems and cause blackouts. Each success came with a price: severe headaches, physical exhaustion, sometimes temporary blindness or memory loss. Their bodies were not designed for this kind of mental strain, but they were learning, and they were not alone. Messages continued to arrive from resistance groups worldwide. Humans everywhere were discovering the same ability. Small acts of sabotage were becoming coordinated attacks. Alien patrols were finding their own equipment turned against them. The Vorthons were starting to notice. Security protocols are changing, Mi-young reported after monitoring alien communications. They are increasing patrols, conducting sweeps of areas that used to be safe. They know something is happening, Kim agreed. We do not have much time before they figure out what we can do. Lee looked at the faces around him. These people had become his family over the past weeks. Some of them would probably die in what was coming, but for the first time since the invasion, humanity had a real chance to fight back. Then we move quickly, he decided. We contact every resistance cell we can find. We share everything we have learned. We teach as many people as possible how to use this ability." Park nodded, her eyes bright with determination despite her exhaustion. "The Vorthons think they understand humans. They think we are simple and weak and predictable." She smiled grimly. "Let us show them how wrong they are." Outside the temple, alien ships continued their patrols across the sky. But for the first time in 15 years, the humans watching those ships were not just hiding from them. They were planning to turn the aliens' own weapons against them.